in this filibuster, why can't a majority make a decision? And, I completely agree with you. We have absolutely no hope of being able to compete with Beijing if senators representing 22% of the American people can basically have a veto on everything. And that is what the filibuster is. That is what the filibuster does. That is what McConnell's abuse of the filibuster has been. And it is not obviously something that's in the Constitution. It's not something that was part of the Senate at the beginning of the Senate. It was something that was used over the years once it got in there to try to stop civil rights legislation. For years and years and years, the people that were filibustering and what was called filibustering, which didn't look anything like what McConnell's doing today, they would relent every single time, except when there was a civil rights bill on the floor. And then they didn't relent because they wanted, that was their truest conviction in a sense. So I think it's fairly straightforward how we should change the rules. We should change the rules so that there's extended debate. So I don't want it to be like the House of Representatives. It's supposed to be the most deliberative body in the world. You might have noticed that we seldom have debate now in the Senate. And the reason for that is that McConnell can filibuster from his office. He can do it by remote control. He doesn't have to go out on the floor.
It's ridiculous.
It is. And in my view, if it shouldn't be the majority that has to demonstrate they have the votes. The folks that are filibustering, they should be on the floor filibustering. And they should be saying, we're going to have a debate in front of the American people, just like Mr. Smith goes to Washington.
Absolutely.
That's what it should look like. So that's one piece of it. Second piece of it is that both parties ought to be able to, and senators within those parties, ought to be able to offer a lot more amendments. We don't get to do that very often. You may have noticed there aren't a lot of amendments. One place where we saw tons was on that old Gang of Eight bill. I was part of the Gang of Eight that wrote that in 2013, the Comprehensive Immigration Bill. That was a time when we had tons and tons of amendments and the process worked the way it's supposed to work. And that's important because in theory, that's what a pluralistic Senate is supposed to look like, is people coming from different places, different points of view, trying to make legislation better from their perspective. And when you don't have that kind of situation, and if Chuck Schumer were here, he'd finish my sentence for me because he's heard me say it so many times, that Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell have too much power in the Senate.
Yep.
We need to democratize the Senate.
Absolutely.
So that people can make legislation better. And then the final point goes to what you said. In the end, 51 people have to be able to make a decision.
Yes.
For us to be able to compete. The current distortion in the Senate is an abuse of the rules. These are not the finest traditions of the U.S. Senate. And we have to change them. And I believe we should change them.
Well, how do you change them?
Well, you have to change. You need to have a majority of people that are willing to change them.
And a majority of the populace.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
What I mean by
Say that
is
again.
let's say the state of Wyoming has much less population, but they get 2 senators.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's what I meant earlier about 20 people representing 22% of the country not being able to veto everything.
Exactly.
Because that's what it is. It's a veto.
Right.
What people should be guaranteed, in my view, is participation. What people should be guaranteed is debate. If they live in one of those states, they definitely should be getting that. What they shouldn't get is a veto. And that's what they have. That's what we have today. And obviously it's without its dangers, because if you change the rules with 51 votes, McConnell could decide he would want to ban, a woman's right to choose in the U.S. Senate. But I think that part of the problem with the current system is that nobody can hold anybody accountable because they don't really understand how it works. 60 votes versus not 60 votes. Here, at least, if you had 51 votes, people would know, what it means to elect this majority versus that majority. So I really, I didn't go to the Senate believing what I just said. I didn't know. I had studied this filibuster, but I now have, and that that is my view.
Well, how do they decide what things need 51 with, Harris coming in, and what things?
Great question. So crazily, the only thing really that gets, actually, that's a really interesting point. So because we've changed the rules for judges and for appointments,
Okay,
those are now 51 votes.
okay.
They're not 60 votes anymore. And there's one other thing that gets 51 votes, and that's called reconciliation. That's what the name of that is.
Right.
Right.
And that is the bill, we just passed a reconciliation bill. The Inflation Reduction Act was one.
Right.
Trump passed a reconciliation bill. The Trump tax cuts is what he passed.
Ridiculous.
And, you know, in theory, the bill is meant to, among other things, get 51 votes because it's supposed to help reduce the budget deficit. In the course of Trump's tax cuts, which I remind you, 52% of which went to the top 5% of people in America. I know, ridiculous. At a time when we've got more income inequality than we've had since the 1920s.
It's ridiculous.
That was Donald Trump's contribution to America through reconciliation. And on top of that, it blew a $2 trillion deficit into our yeah, it'd be like the mayor of Denver, or sort of the mayor of Boulder going to the voters and saying, we're gonna borrow more money than we've ever borrowed before. And you'd say, well, I might be a liberal person in Boulder, but I'd like to hear what you're gonna spend that money on. Are you spending that money on schools? Nope. Are you spending that money on mental health? Nope. How about affordable housing? We need that in Boulder County. Are you spending on affordable housing? No. How about our parks? We like to take care of our parks. No, we're not spending it on that. How about on a new band shell for, nope.
First responders?
Boulder Creek,
Nope.
first responders, no. What are you spending on? We're gonna give the money to the 2 richest zip codes or 2 richest neighborhoods in Boulder and let it trickle down to everybody in Boulder. That's it. But that, it sounds preposterous, but that is
That's their
what
plan.
Donald Trump did. And that is, you know, what Ronald Reagan's
40
vision
years of it.
was. Exactly. And I think we have to turn the page on that stuff. And I think we can. You know, we can. You know, the biggest threat to our democracy is the fact that we have an economy where for years and years and years, all the benefits have gone to the top 10%.
Yep.
And the bottom 90%, it seems crazy to say bottom 90%, 9 out of 10 Americans are struggling to pay for housing and healthcare and higher education
Yep.
and early education, struggling with food prices and energy prices.
We've been robbed.
And we need an economy that, and especially this generation feels that way.
Absolutely.
They feel that way.
Absolutely. They
And-
should be.
And you're right. And we gotta change it. And if we wanna save this democracy, I mean it. It's not just about making sure everybody in America has the chance to vote the way we get the chance to vote here. It's about creating an economy that when it grows for everybody, not just the people at the very top. And I think we can do that. Do you have one more, and then I'll get out of Shelby's way? Thank you.
And we can use them talking.
Yeah. We can get you something, I'm sure, the campaign.
Okay.
Yes, one more.
Has anyone started building a chips plant? I can't think of what it's called.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's a fabrication plant, a chips plant. In Arizona, they're starting to build a chips plant, and in Ohio, you know, an amazing thing. You know, it's just every time I see the picture of that plant in Ohio, I get a big smile on my face
Right.
because I think about the industrial heartland of this country and how it was left behind
That's
by these policies that you and I were talking about earlier, and to see this, you know, this change happening. And I also think Tim Ryan has a real chance of
Yes,
winning
I hope
in
so.
Ohio. He's run an almost perfect campaign.
That's great.
And I have hope that we can win in Ohio and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, Colorado, and Nevada and Arizona and New Hampshire, and that we can add another couple of seats to the Senate this time. I
You're
hope
not
we
worried
will.
about the gerrymandering?
I worry about all that
That's
stuff.
what I worry
You
about.
can't worry about that.
I know.
Well, first of all, let me tell you on the gerrymandering.
Numbers.
I wrote the first bill in Congress, in the Senate or the House, to ban political gerrymandering. We haven't passed it, so I am worried about it. Obviously, I'm worried about it. But look, when you got a world where you got gerrymandering, when you got the Koch brothers, when you have all this super PAC money in our elections, Citizens United, efforts to suppress the vote all over the country. When you have all that, we have to fix all of that, but the antidote to all of that is you guys. Right?
Numbers.
That's the antidote. And people that are doing this all over the country right now, that's the antidote. and making, Amy Klobuchar be second, not first. That's part of it. I know you love her, that's why I mentioned her, but that's the antidote too, that's what we have to do. We just have to get this vote out, we've gotta get this vote out, and I really think we will, so I'll get out of your
Can we
head.
give Senator Bennett a big round of applause for coming out here?